Hello, and welcome to the 17th Annual Food Justice Summit. My name is Enrique Orozco, and I am one of the co-organizers of the summit this year. Before we start your session, I want to highlight some of the accessibility options, engagement features, and explain how to access interpretation services. Hola, y bienvenido a la 17ª Cumbre Anual de la Justicia Alimentaria de Chicago. Me llamo Enrique Orozco y soy uno de los coordinadores de la cumbre este año. Antes de empezar, quiero tomar un momento para indicar las opciones de accesibilidad, las herramientas de participación y los servicios de interpretación. Para acceder a los servicios de interpretación, fíjese al lado izquierdo de su pantalla. Al hacer clic al botón que dice Audio Captions, se abrirá una ventana. Haga clic en Select y luego elige el lenguaje de su preferencia, inglés o español. Comenzarás automáticamente a escuchar al intérprete. Para acceder a los servicios de subtítulo, elige el botón que indique CC. Se tiene que elegir una de estas opciones. Para escuchar a los presentadores, elige la opción Floor. Se puede cerrar esta ventana. Finalmente, deberás silenciar el video principal para no escuchar a los presentadores e intérpretes. Estas opciones también se pueden encontrar al lado derecho de su pantalla, bajo la pestaña que dice Interpretación. To access interpretation services, look at the left side of your screen. By clicking on the Audio Captions button, you will open a window. Click on Select and then choose which language you would like to hear, English or Spanish. You will automatically begin to hear the interpreter. To turn on closed captioning, click on the CC button. You will need to select one of these options. To hear the original speakers, select the Floor option. You may close this window. Finally, you will need to mute the main video in order to not hear the original speakers and interpreters. These features can also be found on the right side of your screen under the Interpretation tab. The platform also offers a number of visual accessibility tools. To find them, click on the profile image at the bottom of your screen, and then select Accessibility Adjustments. You can also change the language of the window through this pop-up. Under these accessibility adjustments, you can select different options to make the website easier to read. We welcome you to participate in the conversation through the chat window. Clicking again on the Chat tab on the right side will open up this screen. Select the box at the beginning to begin typing into the chat. At the end of the session, we will open for a brief question and answer portion, and you may type your questions here. Afterwards, I invite you to open the polling tab to answer a very short survey that lets our team know how well we did in planning these sessions. I hope you enjoy the 17th Annual Chicago Food Justice Summit. I will now turn it over to your speakers.
Hello, everyone, and welcome. I just want to first start off by acknowledging that this is the 17th Annual Chicago Food Policy Action Council in conjunction with other folks. The Food Justice Summit. This is amazing, and I am completely honored to be here and be your moderator today. And I want to just welcome all of the individuals that are joining us, that are watching this, as we look into the different ways that we're investing in food resiliency across Cook County. Hi, everyone. My name is Alma Anaya. I am the Cook County Commissioner of the 7th District. And again, just want to welcome you for joining this panel today and for also being so patient with us. We had a few technical difficulties, but I know you are all very interested in knowing what we're doing in Cook County to make sure that we're pushing for food justice. So I thank you for your patience and for joining us. So we're going to go over some of the objectives that we have for this panel. And I just to give you a preview of what we're going to be looking at, you all will learn what Cook County's current initiatives are that are specifically addressing racial equity and food resiliency. You will also learn about the new funding that's coming from the federal government that is specifically targeted to address the food access issues that we have and also the food-oriented economic development. The last point and objective for this panel will be to learn about Cook County's progress in implementing the good food purchasing policy that we will talk about and give you an update on what we're doing with that. And also, we're looking into the future on what we plan to do for the next 3 years. So without further ado, this is the agenda for the panel. We will be introducing our panelists, having again an overview of the Cook County Good Food Purchasing Policy, and we will be looking with some of the experts, some of the dynamite individuals here in Cook County government, and what we're going to be doing as a government entity, what our role is to foster racial equity and to building a good food system specifically around resiliency. So without further ado, I want to welcome the two panelists, two individuals that I am at awe that have really stepped up here in Cook County to ensure that people are taken care of and that Cook County is at the forefront of having innovative ideas and ways of addressing the issues that we have faced due to the pandemic. First, we'll have Dr. Kiran Joshi, who is the Senior Medical Officer and co-lead of the Cook County Department of Public Health. Dr. Joshi oversees the Cook County Department's behavioral health, chronic disease, communications, community engagement, lead poisoning prevention, epidemiology, units. He is also he's an attending physician with the Department of Family Medicine at Stroger Hospital. He's co-leading the agency's response to COVID-19. We also have Mara Hennigan, who is the Director of Policy in the Office of the Cook County Board President. Mara is the Director of Policy under Tony Preckwinkle, where she coordinates coordinates the implementation of Cook County's strategic policy goals. Mara now manages the alignment of Cook County's American Rescue Plan Act and its spending with the priorities outlined within the Cook County's policy roadmap and oversees several initiatives. And of course, this is an abbreviated bio for our dynamite panelists today. And we're going to jump right in. I know we have a lot of questions, and we're going to go straight into doing an overview of what Cook County has done in the past in regards to food access and food resiliency. So we'll jump into doing an overview specifically around what we did in 2018. If we go to the next. So what is the Good Food Purchasing Policy Plan? I had the honor of, in 2018, right after I was elected, to work with my predecessor in identifying the ways that Cook County can be innovative and looking at the ideas. So there was a resolution that was approved in May of 2018 that specifically recognizes that we have specific impact, and it's estimated at $15.3 million spent on food and beverages, and has over 8 million meals served per year. And what do I mean by that? So Cook County has a health and hospital system. So you all know that there's food contracts there. We also are in charge of the JTDC and, of course, the Cook County Jail, CIRMAC, and other institutions. So that is our spending power in regards to food and beverages. So we wanted to make sure to look into that and see how we are spending and what are the priorities that we're going to be looking at as we move forward to make sure that Cook County, again, is a responsive level of government. This resolution also establishes the Cook County Task Force. It also identifies the different actions for the good food purchasing and encourages relevant Cook County agencies to institute. Excuse me, I am. I don't have my glasses with me. So it looks into the good food purchasing practices and makes it part of our institutional practices. It also is centered around racial justice. So it looks at how do we do business locally? How do we hire and do how do we do purchasing with people who hire low to moderate income communities and persons with prior arrest or prison records, and also access to underutilized and surplus county-owned lands and buildings. Also, looking into farms that are growing organically and using bio-intensive methods. So these are some of the goals and some of the areas that this purchasing policy looked into, and we were hoping to implement that. And again, this was passed in 2018, and we're going to look into some of the areas that were specifically highlighted in this policy plan. So the values that really shaped this policy are the ones on your screen. So we looked at nutrition, we looked at environmental sustainability, we looked at the valued in workforce, and also the local economies and animal welfare. Again, these are the areas and the values that we wanted to make sure that Cook County took into account when we were using that purchasing power, that over $15 million purchasing power, to align ourselves in a way where we were looking at these areas and to ensure that Cook County was not only providing to Cook County residents, but also investing in our residents, investing in our workforce. And that's why this policy was so transformative here in locally. And this is an area that we hope to expand and we hope to build from, especially as we move into recovery from this pandemic. So if you can go to the next slide, we'll look at the process. So the process of this policy is in regards to purchasing, looks into how to understand what we're buying and setting goals, change the food contracts and shift the purchases, also track the progress over time, and finally to celebrate the achievements and share the improvements. And this slide shows a little bit of the different areas that have already adopted this model. So we're looking nationwide at over 57 institutions, 24 cities, and it is growing. We're also looking at the support from the Center for Good Food Purchasing, the Food Chain Workers Alliance, and Heal Food Alliance, who have been amazing. We have our own champions here locally that helped get this through the city and also the county. This movement really looks at over $1 billion in annual food spend that are currently enrolled in this program. So the adoption we are looking at first happened here locally in the region in the city of Chicago when their purchasing policy was adopted in 2017. So the city and the county did collaborative efforts to ensure and to support the Chicago Food Policy Action Council, again, which are amazing leaders and helped support this locally. It also helped launch the Metro Chicago Good Food Purchasing Initiative in 2019. Again, these are some of the areas that the program really looks into. And this is why it's so important to have this discussion today. We're, again, going into recovery, and these are models and areas that we want to make sure that are at the forefront. So number one, economic development, again, works to address the racial wealth gap. good government creates value-based and transparent food supply chain and greater accountability. And last but not least, equity. Build a more healthy, equitable, and sustainable food system and access to good food for all. So with that, we're going to go into our panelist, and we're going to be discussing again this purchasing policy program, and then we're going to be discussing again some of the other initiatives. So we'll welcome Mara and Dr. Yoshi with our first question. First of all, welcome and thank you so much for joining us. Again, you two have really stepped up in your fields and really identified the different areas that we need to focus on in Cook County, being the second largest county in the country. We have a lot of transformative and trailblazing to do. So thank you both for doing what you do. So our first question is, why is Cook County government prioritizing the implementation of the good food purchasing policy? And I'll hand it off to Mara first.
Well, good morning, everybody, and thank you, Commissioner, both for your introduction and for your work on this policy. It could not have happened without you. So the Good Food Purchasing Program aligns so well with Cook County's policy roadmap, which, as we mentioned, is our strategic plan that was released in November 2018. That plan focuses on good governance and transparency and economic development and community health and racial equity. And all of those things have very significant kind of links to the Good Food Purchasing Program, as the Commissioner was laying out. The county approved the resolution in May 2018, and it's been exciting to see support just grow from there internally. I would say the other thing with our policy roadmap, the values we established in that roadmap for offices under the President specifically are equity, engagement, and excellence. And that to me sums up the Good Food Purchasing Program and both the program itself and the ways I've seen Cook County government approach this. So I would say the first reason we prioritize it is that strategic alignment with so many of our goals. And then the other one is to the Commissioner and I's point about purchasing power and really recognizing that's an area that government has a lot of strength, especially in the local market here for food, and wanting to make sure we're using that tool and that lever of government to make an impact on the food system. So we are serving as good stewards of public funds and advancing our goals both through programs and through how we spend our money.
Great, thank you. Dr. Yoshi, do you have anything to add on and with the perspective of the public health arena in Cook County?
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner. And I want to echo Mara's comments. Once again, really appreciative of your support of this policy and program. Would be very challenging to lead this without your support and without the support of the Board of Commissioners and of course the Office of the President. All of our work at CCDPH is grounded in health equity, and that's whether we're supporting policies like GFPP, supporting policies like minimum wage and earned sick leave, or the day-to-day work of public health, which includes investigating communicable diseases, case managing high-risk infants, or preventing tobacco use. The COVID-19 pandemic really highlighted in bold relief the disparities that we in public health have been familiar with for decades, particularly in our southern suburbs and the west suburbs. There are some slides I think I had, and one of those slides shows that there's a map with various factors, including COVID risk, food insecurity, and poverty. And all of those factors overlap, they're interwoven, and they're tangled together. So this is really, again, not a surprise that you see so much overlap on these maps. We know that Latinx and African-American residents have historically been disproportionately affected by the chronic conditions that put them at increased risk for more severe illness and even death from COVID-19, along with other chronic and communicable diseases. These inequitable health outcomes are the result of years of racist policies like redlining, which led to segregation and in turn resulted in limited access to health care, along with community disinvestment. So COVID-19 really worsened all of those pre-existing issues, such as unemployment, access to medical care, access to healthy foods, and so forth. And so we've seen then resulting increases in homicides, opioid-related deaths, and various other health outcomes. The pandemic also exposed the weak points in our food system and has resulted in food supply chain disruptions that in turn increased food insecurity and caused economic harm to some of our most vulnerable communities, and has really demonstrated why we need to work to build a local food system that is more resilient. And I am convinced that advancing the GFPP is a really good step that the county can take towards building in this resiliency and being prepared for any crisis that may come in the future.
Thank you both. I think that map of really is astonishing, but not, obviously something that we do know, and we see how this overlaps. The inequities really do impact health and life outcomes, and it has shown it, right? The studies have shown it. So thank you so much, Dr. Yoshi, for her highlighting that, and Mara for looking into why it's important, why Cook County and the President's office is really taking this into account and taking it as such a serious matter. And I think that that's important, and definitely creates relief that we know that we have leaders that are really looking into prioritizing food justice. So this goes into my next question in, what exactly is happening or has happened to date with this purchasing policy implementation, right? So it happened in 2018, and there's been a lot of work that was done prior to the pandemic and during the pandemic. So Dr. Yoshi, do you want to walk us through, what has happened to date?
Sure. Thank you, Commissioner. So again, I think there's a slide that sort of shows our charge, which is really convening the Cook County Good Food Task Force. And that includes a number of county departments, our sister agencies, along with food system stakeholders from the community, all in order to provide strategic direction on the implementation of GFPP in Cook County. Next slide. So working with our sister agencies, including Cook County Health, the JTDC, the Juvenile Temporary Detention Center, the Cook County Sheriff's Office, all to collect annual food purchasing data and complete baseline assessments for the county-run hospital, jail, and the Juvenile Temporary Detention Center. And we've worked with these departments to develop their good food action plans, how to translate this really great policy into action for implementation. So we've worked with them to set goals to make incremental changes over time in the foods that we as a county government purchase and that are in turn served in county facilities. So we've worked with these county departments and the Cook County Office of the Chief Procurement Officer to integrate GFPP principles into the county's food-related contracts and solicitations. So I know some of this can sound really kind of rather dry. And so just for the next slide, I wanted to provide just a concrete sense of what has changed. And I want to give a huge, huge shout out to my colleagues at the Juvenile Temporary Detention Center who have worked so diligently to implement GFPP. This has resulted in things like them reviewing their menus to ensure that healthy options were available by reducing red meat, integrating more whole grain snacks, and removing sugary snacks. JTDC has also integrated GFPP goals into their contracts for various food items and added in specifications for distributors to provide them with organic and other sustainable products. And then finally, they've begun to integrate, and I think this is one of the coolest things they've done because it makes it so real. They've begun to integrate their garden programming with what's offered on their menu so that the residents of the JTDC have experienced not only growing produce, but then seeing that integrated into delicious meals.
Thank you so much, Dr. Yoshi. That's definitely interesting to see. I did not know that there was the Karma Garden and how it's being implemented into the food that's being served as well. And it aligns perfectly with the good food purchasing policy. Mara, do you have an update on the president's end and all the departments under the president's office?
Sure. So I'd just like to echo kind of thanking all of our partners across Cook County government and in the community for partnership here, because something that's exciting about this is just how many people and entities have bought into it and are helping advance this work. From the Office of the President and per the resolution that the board passed, the Cook County Department of Public Health is required to provide an annual update on Cook County's on our implementation of the Good Food Purchasing Program each year. And this year, or I should say in 2021, the President's Office partnered with the Cook County Department of Public Health and the Chicago Food Policy Action Council to host several GFPP annual update meetings during our Racial Equity Week, which is a week in September that the Office of the President programs to specifically look at our policy making and our kind of presence in communities through a racial equity lens. And it was so exciting for us to tie in that. So to tie in the annual updates with our kind of Racial Equity Week and make sure we're bringing those updates to many more community members and also situating it very clearly as part of our racial equity policy making. So these were an opportunity for our Cook County government leaders and community partners to explore ways to address any major barriers and then identify opportunities to advance GFPP together moving forward. We have a recording from that September partner meeting, and I think we can also drop the annual update in the chat.
Marley, can we pull up the recording?
Oh, sorry. I can drop it in the chat. We won't play it now.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
Okay, I thought we were gonna play it. Okay, thanks, Mara. Appreciate that update. So it looks like a lot of work has happened and a lot of great things have come from, implementing the policy and really looking at what can happen or, maybe have encountered some challenges. So can we talk about those? What have been the challenges? What have been the opportunities as we're learning this through the implementation of what can we do? A county that has so much purchasing power and has so many entities, and let's face it, we're the safety net in many areas, right? Both in the criminal justice system and in the public health sphere. So, Dr. Yoshi, are there any challenges that we have learned from, and what are the opportunities as we grow and further implement this?
Sure. So CCDPH has worked really closely with CFPAC, the Chicago Food Policy Action Council, to work collaboratively to advance implementation across the county since the GFPP was approved in 2018. We're very aware that GFPP alone, this shifting of institutional demand toward good food, is not enough, and that we have to take a comprehensive approach to achieve our intended impacts. And that includes the development of an equitable supply chain and building a good food culture. So through this work, we've identified a number of challenges. So we're working to overcome these, but for example, with GFPP implementation, COVID-19 disrupted the entire food supply chain. And we also know that public procurement processes need to shift to better align with GFPP goals and that idea of values-based procurement, rather than just focusing on that one bottom line value. We, of course, also need to work towards transparency and availability of detailed food purchasing data from vendors. As you can imagine, this is sometimes challenging to capture. In terms of supply chain equity, we also know that access to land, water, capital, technical assistance, capacity building is critical for Black, Latinx, Indigenous, and all other food growers of color and producers to start selling into wholesale and institutional market channels. This is something that really needs to be built up. So more technical assistance and support are needed to navigate how to become a vendor or a subcontractor with the county. In building a good food culture, we need to build stronger engagement processes for meal program recipients, for food workers and farmers, all to inform them about what's on the menu. We need better staff capacity to support deeper changes to sourcing and food environments. And if anyone is interested in learning more about all of this, I want to just reference an issue brief that was developed in 2021 by CCDPH and is available on our website, cookcountypublichealth.org. I think maybe we can drop that in the chat. I do want to make it clear that there are a lot of opportunities that we see as well. We're working with CIFPAC to leverage CDC's COVID-19 Health Equity Grant. That's going to give us a lot of capacity to inventory GFPP-aligned farms and food businesses across Cook County and connect to capacity building opportunities to support them. And of course, we'll also be leveraging funds from ARPA, the American Rescue Plan Act, to support Cook County's GFPP implementation. This is an initial investment, and it's going to increase staff capacity to support Good Food Action Plan implementation and also further assessments to track the progress that's being made towards GFPP goals. Funding, of course, is also going to contribute to a grant program for farm and food business resilience. So very, very excited about all of this and a lot of additional good work that we know is going to come.
Thank you so much. There's definitely a lot we're learning, a lot of opportunities. So that's exciting to hear that. Again, we're not just stopping at a passage of a resolution. We're really making it into a live and constantly living document, a living thing that we want to make sure that we're adjusting, especially with ARPA funding coming our way. There are a lot of opportunities. I know that there's other counties that have really took, the food insecurity and food justice seriously and have implemented and used the federal funding that's coming down to ensure again that we're fighting for justice. So Mara, so in addition to the GFPP, can you describe other ways that the county is investing in food resiliency?
Absolutely. ARPA, the American Rescue Plan Act, is one of my favorite things to talk about, so I'm happy to do that here too. And just for folks who maybe aren't as familiar, this is the largest this is a piece of federal legislation that's one of the largest public investments in programs like this since the New Deal. And Cook County is in a position to be able to spend a significant portion of the funding we're going to receive directly on programs like this and other programs, kind of putting services directly into the community. And that's because of really good fiscal stewardship over the past couple years and decade. So we're very excited here in Cook County. I think if you ask any of the three of us, we can tell you some of our favorite projects and the ways we're very excited to see this roll out in community. But specifically on food justice and food access, we have, in addition to the Good Food Purchasing Program, a couple other projects that we've allocated initial funding for in FY22. And we have a document that we call ARPA at a glance, and that's in English and Spanish. I think that will be in the chat or is already available for everybody if you want to dig into this more. But just within those programs, I think something that's really exciting to me is each of those 4 programs in our food security portfolio is being run by a different organization within Cook County government. And I think that really speaks to the priorities that GFPP has allowed us to bring this to all of our work and our focus on food justice across departments. And so we're not only relying on the Department of Public Health to implement the Good Food Purchasing Program, we're also looking at Cook County Health expanding their Food as Medicine program. So that will directly serve Cook County Health patients. Our Department of Environment and Sustainability is going to conduct a food gap analysis study specifically focused on urban farming. And that's a really exciting connection to GFPP and also a really useful place for us to start to direct some of our additional environment and sustainability work. And then finally, our Bureau of Economic Development is going to expand existing emergency food grants, but we're looking at that not just kind of in the immediate need for getting food out to our communities, but also doing this capacity building for the organizations we know are really essential to making that happen. And so I think for me, I'm just excited to see the ways that we're able to support this entire ecosystem and support our residents in making sure they have access to good quality food.
Thank you, Mara. I appreciate that intentionality of supporting. I know we can't do it by ourselves. The different departments can't do it by ourselves. It really is a collective. And it does take everyone, both obviously the Department of Public Health, but also the agencies that have to, deal with this and have to be open to the idea and the implementation. So I truly appreciate, yours and the president's office support in making sure that this really comes to a full reality. I know we discussed a lot. We talked about the initiative, some of the other things that we're hoping to do. We're going to open it up now for questions if we have any. I know we have a few more minutes. So I know Marley was going to help us with moderating any type of questions or comments that were maybe put in the chat. So Marley, do we have any feedback from folks that were listening in? Okay, great. So it doesn't look like we have any specific questions as of yet. So if you do have anything, feel free to drop it on the chat. I think something that was just brought up that I think we could expand on a little bit is when Mara mentioned about using food as medicine. And I think that this is a concept that we can all relate to, right? So I have a question for you both. I know that we had, the fresh truck that was outside of the Stroger and the different clinics that would go around. So maybe Dr. Yoshi, is this still happening? What else is the department doing in that way that we can actually have a very direct impact in making sure that people have accessibility to this whole concept of not only are we purchasing and doing that, but we're also intentionally creating spaces and opportunities for residents when they're coming to Cook County.
Thanks so much, Commissioner. Just to be clear, that is a project under the clinical side of Cook County Health. We are very much supportive of that and similar initiatives to directly assess or directly address what we call the social determinants of health, food insecurity being among them. If you'll permit me, I'm going to flip your question just a little bit because I think that while food can be medicine, it certainly can be in many ways. I think in the case of the food of the Good Food Purchasing Program, I think policy change can be good medicine too. One of the components of GFPP that I personally am just really excited about is the valued workforce piece. Because what you have here is essentially an encouragement of businesses in the food sector to pay workers a fair wage and to guarantee them paid sick leave. So I sort of feel like the connections there to public health can kind of make themselves. Because, for example, would you ever want someone coming to work in the food sector that was sick? You would never want that, right? And also there are connections to COVID-19. We know that low-wage workers, people engaged in precarious work, were much more likely to be exposed to COVID-19 because they had a horrible choice to make. They could either choose to stay home and take care of themselves or go to work and help put food on the table. That's an impossible choice. And I think in 2022 in our country, no one should have to face that. And I think the implementation of the GFPP and adoption of GFPP principles will take us a long way towards not only food justice, but social justice.
I love that, like expanding those values and those concepts in all areas and aspects of what the county, maybe not only just what Cook County is doing, but how can we also hold the whole county accountable to our values. I mean, this summit is, in specifically looking at, how do we care for each other, right? And so I think that that's a perfect way of implementing and looking at these values that we've already agreed as a board to look at, how do we have our society also ensuring that we are prioritizing the health and well-being of all of the residents, right? And I think that that's what our job is as public servants, to ensure that we do everything in our fields to ensure that happens. So, Mara, were there any other closing matters or anything else that you want to highlight at this moment, particularly around what we're talking about and addressing some of these inequities that exist in Cook County, and that, like Dr. Yoshi said earlier, have been systematic, have been, centuries in the making? Anything else that you want to chime in on?
Absolutely. And I think, I'm echoing many of the points you both made, but we have invested in getting kind of services to people at times of crisis, and that doesn't change the structures that are causing those services to be, causing people to need access to those services. And that's something I think on the Good Food Purchasing Program and many of the programs that have been discussed throughout the summit that are running in organizations across the county, that we're seeing is how are we changing the structures that are keeping kind of these practices in place. Back to the point of having these workforce components in a program that's maybe a procurement program, maybe a food access program. Its goal doesn't have to just be workforce, but the intentionality to include a pretty broad 5 different goals throughout the GFPP, I think that, to me, from a policy lens, is how we advance real change and how we make sure that change creates systems of care that support residents beyond, any one program. And so that's something that's really exciting about the GFPP from a policy perspective, and a reason I think it's provided a really good model for us within Cook County government to adopt across kind of more value-based policy making, and thinking about, we want to provide, we want to focus on food justice. We also want to focus on environmental justice, and those are so linked so often. And how can we use what we're learning from GFPP and the implementation here to advance all of these other goals that are so interrelated?
Thank you, Mara. So we have one question, and I think it aligns a little bit with what you were talking about of, expanding and making sure that we're addressing a lot of these issues. So, are there any specific plans geared towards addressing food deserts in the south suburbs? This is a great question. I mean, really quick, we just saw that the census happened last year. We're getting the data. A lot of our communities that have been disinvested have been displaced into the suburbs, yet we don't seem to have as much support system there. So Cook County really has to step up. Dr. Yoshi, do you want to attempt to address this question?
Yeah, not specific towards food deserts per se, but I do want all of our viewers to know that we always look at the data when we're making decisions about allocating resources. And that goes to whether we're talking about vaccines, it goes to where we talk about needing outreach and additional services. And being really specific, one of the measures that we look at is the COVID-19 Community Vulnerability Index, the map of which we showed earlier on, and that I think highlighted pretty clearly which areas in the suburbs were most vulnerable. Those being some of the near west suburbs, and then 2 clusters, one in the near south suburbs and then one in the very south suburbs. And so very clear about where those gaps are. And I'd say, all of our activities, we try to focus on those areas where there is the most need.
Thank you. Mara, any follow-up to that?
Yeah, I was going to say, I think one of the ways that we intend to do this is through that capacity building grant program I discussed that will be led by the Bureau of Economic Development. And that's really to recognize, we know the need. I think many of the folks in attendance at this session know the need. And government can't do it alone. A nonprofit organization already located in those communities can't do it alone. We need to have this partnership. And from a government perspective, with this influx of federal resources, we want to make sure we're co-creating with community. And so to the extent we can set up this grant program and kind of be as flexible as possible for the needs of individual communities, I think we see a lot of success there. And we see an exciting way to bring in partners who are on this call, partners who we know are working in this space and who have those really trusted relationships with the community, and who kind of know the needs in a way that we will be able to get this money out faster and get resources to folks faster. So we're looking forward to that. I can say for folks on the call, we are actively working to stand these programs up. And we will make sure that there is a lot more information shared about when those RFPs will be available. And we have a link I can share from a capacity building summit that the city, county, and state hosted on February 4th, which was an initial information session essentially for organizations who might be interested in applying for funding from any of those governments. So that resource might be helpful to get folks started, and then we'll have very specific kind of food justice information hopefully coming soon.
Great. Well, thank you. We are going to close out now. We know we are out of time, but just want to, again, thank you all. I want to thank the Chicago Food Policy Action Council and all of the partners that made this summit happen and this session. Mara, thank you. Dr. Yoshi, Barb, Desiree, thank you so much for helping us out today in interpretation. I know we have a Spanish interpreter as well. And thank you again for having me as a moderator today to discuss such important policy initiatives that we're working in Cook County. And thanks everyone for joining.